Okay, welcome to Silicon Valley Impact. This is Roger Royce on Tal Radio, and today we are talking with Aaron Magenheim. He's the founder of AgTech Insight. He works with agriculture technology. He's been one of the early and big prominent promoters of the space, especially here in California and throughout the world. So welcome, Aaron. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Roger.
So this is Silicon Valley Impact. We like to talk about not just things from Silicon Valley, but things that are from, I guess, the idea of Silicon Valley to have a big impact in the world. And it's hard to imagine anything that could be more impactful than changing the way that food is produced and delivered and consumed. And that's kind of, you're squarely in the middle of that space. So maybe let's start out by telling us a little bit about AgTech Insight and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so, we have a global team of experts that work across food and agriculture, kind of throughout the supply chain, fish to forests. And so we help organizations understand kind of where they're at today and where they want to go in technology, and then we'll help them find the right technologies and implement those. We also work with startups and investors, helping them understand the space and how to grow. And, I'm excited about where the industry is at today because, we have a lot of technologies that we need. We have what we need for next, 5-10 years. We just need to learn to implement them and use them. And so it's an exciting place to be, and organizations and consumers alike are looking at sustainability or are looking at where their food comes from more than ever.
On that point, that is for sure, isn't it? That consumerism is playing such a big part in this, and consumers are driving a lot of this. They want to know where their food is, where their food's been produced, how it's been produced, where it's been. Would you say that that's been true over the last few years, that the consumer markets have changed?
Yeah, consumer markets are changing, and things like TikTok just change, the buying and eating habits of a generation overnight. So those are the types of things that we don't do a real good job at capitalizing on in our in agriculture food side of things, of telling our story. But there's people that have tens of millions of viewers that are just talking about what they're eating and how they're eating and things along those lines. So we're seeing the taste profiles, not only due to these technologies kind of allowing people to understand what foods are out there, but also letting people people are making more money and able to spend more money and wanting to try different things. So especially with COVID, you can't travel, so spend money on food.
Yeah, and they can spend more money on being careful about food or organic, for example, stuff natural sometimes. I like to tell people, every time I walk into a Pete's Coffee, I feel like I'm saving the world by buying a cup of coffee. All the signs they have all over, this is slave labor free, this is free trade, this is this and that. These beans have been, really been taken care of. So that tells me that the consumers are very concerned about these sorts of issues. What kind of technology, because you're from the technology side, or at least you're in the technology side now, you're from the agriculture side, but what kind of technology would assist a consumer in knowing about provenance and origins and things about their food?
Yeah, so it's still a bit challenging because most of our supply chain is not connected real well. So what a farmer's doing and the practices he's doing are not necessarily transferred or translated to to the end consumer. But larger food companies and retailers are really kind of bridging that gap. There's some interesting technologies that are coming out, where you can use your phone to take a picture of, a piece of fruit in the store, and it will help you know how fresh it is. There's things that these retailers are doing on trying to optimize, these supply chains. And so, as the technologies connect more, it gives more visibility. And so, a lot of them right now are more focused on kind of helping meet certain regulatory demands or certain buyer demands that a Costco or a Walmart has put in place. But there's definitely so as those chains get filled in and that data is available, then they're able to start providing that information to the consumer as well. So I'm excited for, hopefully in the next few years, you can walk in and say, kind of like apples, typically apples have about the most information. You have options for a lot of different apples at the store, but, we want to see that with lots of other fruit and vegetables as well. So those technologies are coming. It's something that still we have to connect the supply chain to get that level of information. But the data is there, and it's an exciting time to be a consumer and have choices.
There is, and related to that, I know there's several companies recently got funded that are just helping keep that eliminate food waste, which of course is a huge problem, especially in California from farm to table. So several technologies dealing with from that standpoint, correct?
Yeah, and I mean they're tackling it from lots of different angles, and it's exciting because I guess there's a couple different ways to look at it. There's the grow local, more CEA or indoor agriculture side of things that's growing to help you get fresher lettuce, fresher produce. And then the other piece is, being able to better store these different crops. And so, it gives you a better piece of produce. When I lived in Texas, I got to where I didn't even eat fresh foods for a few months out of the year because, by the time they got through that supply chain, it wasn't worth eating. When I grew up in California and was used to having stuff, a day or two old. So, I think consumers are realizing what a good berry or a bad berry tastes like and demanding that. So, there's definitely some good technologies.
Isn't that the truth? I'm from the Midwest too, and I actually worked in produce, and you could always tell the Californians because they were very picky about their oranges. They knew what a good fresh orange was and what one tasted like that in traveling for a couple thousand miles. Anyway, we're talking with Aaron Magenheim from AgTech Insight. This is Roger Royce on Silicon Valley Impact on Tel Radio. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. And we're back. This is Roger Royce on Silicon Valley Impact on Tel Radio. We're talking with Aaron Magenheim. He is the founder of AgTech Insight, and he's talking with us about AgTech and how AgTech is going to save the world. Let's talk about food security, because that is kind of the number one issue that comes up whenever we think about agriculture and agriculture technology. And I know just from my work in the space that we kind of have a world now that's growing, population is growing quite quickly, and there's a concern that the food supply has to keep up. And we have a lot of, outside the US, there's a lot of countries that have been used to relying on donations of either aid or support or maybe even in-kind food, who are now shifting to putting in place the processes for food production. And that is all technology, right? If you're trying to grow food in a desert, that's all technology. But Aaron, could you tell us a little bit about this food security problem? How big a problem is it? And how is AgTech responding to that threat?
Yeah, it's been really interesting because over the years, especially when you're traveling internationally, food security meant, do we have enough food? The last few years in the US and more developed countries, food security meant, do we have good quality food? Do we have the organic food? Do we know where it's coming from? Well, with COVID and people seeing that supply chains are challenging to begin with, and throw a little wrench in it, and it gets a little bit more fun, people are starting to just want to make sure that they have good food to eat to start with, but they also want it to be good food. So there's been some huge changes in the food supply chain over the last year and a half. It's forced organizations to dive in and start using technology at a rate that they wouldn't have done otherwise. It's forcing more visibility into what's happening at the farm field. It's showing that people are more aware that it's a challenge to get a truckload of strawberries from Salinas over to the East Coast, whether if it's weather related, whether there's truck stops that will only allow you to get 100 gallons of fuel, whether there's lots of different challenges. And so understanding more about the demand of what's happening and what's selling and what consumers are looking for, and helping farmers understand what that demand is and how they can respond to that is big. We've also seen some big changing buying habits where people are going out to eat a lot less, and so where the food sector, the food service sector that serve restaurants, that has significantly changed. And so some of those organizations that were 70 or 80% involved in that in the food service sector had to shift and help supply help supply grocery stores. And so you're moving from selling a box of apples or a box of lettuce to a restaurant, and changing to having to pack those individually to sell them in an individual sale in a grocery store.
Well, you touched on a lot of topics there. So let's unpack that a little bit. So one was food safety, which has become sort of a big issue over the last couple of years, as you've mentioned. And and I guess that goes along with provenance that we were talking about, knowing where your food comes from. But it's especially true because food delivery is changing so much during COVID. I know I go to restaurants a lot less. I'll just have them deliver it to me. What the heck? Yeah. And that's something that we probably wouldn't have done as much before, but now it's just that's just the way things are done. And it's a technology solution. It's part of a business change, right? But there are technologies that are just making that so easy now. So that's probably a big part of it. So food safety. And then the other part of that, I think, has to do not only with delivery, but with supply chain. And you touched on this earlier. Is technology helping enable the supply chain so we can get that food from the farmer's field to the table more efficiently?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at a truck, to send a truck from Salinas to the East Coast used to be $4,000, $5,000. Now it's pushing $13,000 to $15,000 just over the last few years. So, costs are a lot more expensive. And so, we have a client that we're working with that, they're sending hundreds of trucks a month throughout around the world, really, shipping stuff all over the place. But so, understanding, being able to have a better use technologies to bring your dispersed data sets together into a central location, start using, some basic analytics, business intelligence type of stuff to know what's going on. And then the fun part is now it's organized and you have some ideas on what's happening. Now you can start laying some optimization layers over the top of it. And so that's, where technology can run millions of different options for where trucks can go and where they can pick up and how the food stays the freshest and things along those lines. That's something that someone just can't do in their head. And so technology is enabling, to have a more effective, optimized, and fresh supply chain.
Yeah, got it. Okay, we're talking with Aaron Magenheim. He is the founder of AgTech Insights. This is Roger Royce at Silicon Valley Impact on Tal Radio. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Hey, we're back. This is Roger Royce on TEL Radio with Silicon Valley Impact, speaking with Aaron Magenheim from AgTech Insight. We're just going through some of the ways that agriculture is changing and how technology is solving some of these modern day problems: food safety, food security, food delivery, supply chain, logistics. I've saved the biggest for last year. I'd like to talk about how technology is actually making big impacts in the world in terms of protecting the environment and helping stabilize or prevent climate change. So let's start with the environment. I grew up in the Midwest, and I like to tell people, I remember when I'd go fishing down at the river, in the Red River, and on the border of North Dakota and Minnesota, I'd have to call I think it was Fish and Game, and ask them if I could eat the fish that day, because there's so many nitrates in the water. And that's a problem. I mean, we can't deny it. There's a big environmental impact. I know farmers don't like it when I say that, but it's true. But the reason I say that is because, look, there's a solution to that problem. I mean, just look at Blue River has done in reducing the amount of pesticides that get put into the soil. Let's talk about that, Aaron. First of all, is that really a problem, or am I just an alarmist? And secondly, is there a technology solution to that problem?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Every organization can improve what they're doing. Most farmers can cut their usage of fertilizer, water, etc. by half. But the problem is, especially in specialty crops, that we're not measuring exactly what we put on a specific field. And so, it's a challenge. The first thing you have to do is measure, and then, and then use technologies to help understand how you can, reduce and improve. Because we talked about food security earlier, and the last thing you want is that we saved a little bit of fertilizer, but we got half the crop, and so now we have half the now we have a big food security issue. So there's a balance there, and it's something that can't be taken lightly. But there are a lot of technologies that can help with that. The other exciting thing, besides just digital technologies and being able to better track and monitor and apply, variable rate application, that type of stuff. Besides that, there's a lot of biotechnologies that are coming into the space to use, different types of fertilizers, things that won't impact the environment so much. And a lot of times they'll even have as good or better growth rates than the traditional stuff. But the thing that people don't realize is, if you've been using a synthetic fertilizer, which is what most people use for nitrogen, you can't just overnight start, growing microbes and growing organic soil, and everything just, goes back to how it was originally. It's a process. And so, our other company, Growers Insight, that's what we do, is help companies really look at what is the process that you're going to take to get to where you want to be as a sustainable company, as a more technology advanced company, etc. In the next 5 years. These things all have to, it takes time. So there's definitely some exciting things happening. And it's a mix, which is also neat, because it's a mix between digital technologies and biological technologies, feeding each other information and improving together.
Yeah, related to that, you mentioned sustainability, and of course, everyone's very concerned about climate change, and agriculture is a big carbon emitter. It's got to be the biggest carbon emitting industry. And of course, there are technologies that are dealing with that, and we can talk about that. But one of the things I know is that urban farming, which you've mentioned, which seems to be getting bigger and bigger all the time, that has a big carbon footprint. LED lighting, has a carbon footprint. Now, I talked to a company just this week that's got a way of not being carbon negative and doing LED urban farming. But it's a long ways, I think, to commercialization. Maybe not. What do I know? But let's just say that technology, I think, has not yet quite solved that problem, but probably could. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I mean the interesting thing is, while agriculture, especially the logistics part, does produce a lot of carbon, it also sequesters a lot of carbon, where a lot of industries, manufacturing isn't going to sequester anything. So it kind of it causes issues, but it also can fix a lot of issues as well, and so it's an interesting space to be. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of opportunity moving forward. And I think agriculture is the answer to fix a lot of the issues that we have out there. But you have to take a systematic approach.
Got it. Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Aaron, for being here today. We covered a lot of topics in a short time in agriculture technology. This is Roger Royce. I've been speaking with Aaron Magenheim on Silicon Valley Impact on Tel Radio. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.